Hi, fellow believers. I just wanted to make a testimony about how the Lord gave me a new dog. And in February, my dog Max passed away, and it was really hard because he was my son, and he saved my life. God gave him to me to save me from really debilitating loneliness that I had before I even became born again. The Lord gave me Max. And he was such a beautiful blessing. This is him a few months before he passed away. And what happened when he passed away was I was really desperate to get another animal, even though I knew that no animal would ever take his place. I still wanted another animal to take care of, and part of it was guilt because I didn't think that I took good enough care of Max, and so I wanted to make up for it by taking care of another animal. And so I started looking, and it's kind of comical because I actually tried to adopt 5 different animals, and the 5th one I finally was able to keep. I thank God that I did take the other ones back to the shelters, and that was really hard. It was really hard to take those animals back because it made me feel even more guilty because I was rejecting them and I wasn't keeping them. But I knew that in order to make up for taking them back, I had to find an animal I could keep. And because if I took them back and didn't have any animal, then it would really be a loss. So I kept feeling guilt because I adopted these animals that all of them had some sort of behavior or something that prevented me from being able to keep them and survive. The first dog was part blue heeler, and he was way too active for me. And I was taking him for walks. We were spending like 2 hours a day going on walks, but that wasn't enough for him. He was a blue heeler puppy, and he needed 6 hours of exercise a day, and I could only give him 2 hours. And so he was going crazy, and he was nipping and pawing me all day long and whining, and he was as tortured as I was, and he wouldn't let me sleep, and he wouldn't let me get any sanctity or peace at home because he was just wound up all the time, and he needed a full-time job. And so he couldn't rest when I was at my desk, and I took him to work a lot, and but he had to be crated a lot, and it wasn't, he hated that. But it was the only way that I could get him to stop pawing me and nipping me. So after a while, my Christian friends counseled me and told me I had to take him back because it wasn't good for either me or that dog. And it was really hard to take him back. But he was happy to go back to the shelter. He didn't even look back at me. He didn't even look back at me. And so that gave me a little bit of peace, but I still felt guilty. But if I had kept him, he would have started to growl and probably bite me eventually because he was just going nuts from boredom. So, in fact, he was starting to growl right before I took him back. So I felt real guilty. Then I tried to get another dog, and that dog a lot of these shelters don't give accurate information when you go there, or when you look at the animal online. There is false information on a lot of these animals. So I went to this other shelter thinking that I was going to get a dog that was the same size as Max, and it turned out he was almost twice the size as Max. And I didn't realize it until I had him in my truck and we were on the way home. He was a beautiful, he was an old kind of, an old sweet dog. And he really wanted to stay with me. But when he got in that my little tiny truck, it was evident that it wasn't safe for him to be in the truck with me, because he was so big that he was, his body was putting us into neutral gear. And it was really dangerous trying to drive with him. So the next day, a coworker tried to help me get him into the back of the truck, but he was too old to jump in the back, and he tried so hard, but he could not jump in the back, and that would have been the only safe place to carry him. So that day I had to take him back. And then I felt really awful because he really wanted to stay with me, and that really hurt to take an old dog back. But it was too unsafe. And when I tried to leave him in the apartment, he panicked. And so I knew that it would take him a lot of time before I would be able to leave him alone. And I couldn't drive around with him. So anyway, that was a disaster. And so then I got another dog who I went to another shelter, and they swore up and down that dog was not Blue Heeler. And they said she was a shepherd mix, which is what she looked like. So I took her home, and that evening she started, just with those razor sharp teeth, chewing everything in sight and nipping my heels. So I knew I couldn't keep her. So I took her back the next day. And by now I'm feeling like such a loser. But I knew I had to find the right animal. But I knew that if I kept that girl healer, that she would also start to go crazy like the first healer did, because there's no way I could provide her with enough activity to fulfill her. So I took her back, and then I tried a cat. I tried to adopt a cat, and I did research, and I found that Russian Blues were one of the cats on my research list that are quiet and do well in apartments. And it said that they do meow at mealtime, but that's all. That's just to let you know they're hungry. So I thought, well, that's fine. I can handle a cat meowing at mealtime. And me and my brother discussed it after all these other failures, and we both thought the same thing. What could go wrong with a cat? So I went and picked up this Russian Blue, actually, is what they're called. And the cat meowed all night long, every single night. And I had the cat for about a month. The first dog I had for 2.5 weeks, and I took him back when he started growling, because I knew we just couldn't continue that way. It was just going to keep getting worse. The cat I had for a month, but he kept me awake every single night that whole month. And I could sleep a couple hours here and there, but I never got a full night's sleep. And the cat would just meow all night long. And you wouldn't believe all the things I tried to get that cat to be quiet. I was told, use a spray bottle of water and just spray him. Well, it turned out he kind of liked that. And anyway, it was pretty funny, but it was sad too, because that cat liked me. He didn't love me, but he liked me. And he was a really intelligent, gorgeous animal. So it was sad to bring him back too. But he also, when I took him back to the shelter, he acted like he was really happy to be back, and he never looked at me or anything. And he acted like he had just been away at a pajama party and now he returned. So I didn't feel too guilty, but I still felt kind of guilty, because that was a beautiful animal. They all were great animals. And then I feel like there was another dog in there, but no, must not have been. So it was 4 animals. And then, I kept waiting and praying, and I felt like a total loser. I felt like an animal abuser, and I just felt like a bad person because I couldn't. And I began to really wonder, does the Lord even want me to have an animal? Does he want me to just focus on the podcast and get it done? But I couldn't rest. Every day I was online looking for animals and going to shelters. I would visit shelters. And anyway, so finally, again, I went to a shelter thinking that it was a male dog that I had seen online that might work. And it turns out it's a female dog, but it's okay because she actually worked out. And I still have her, and she's for life. This is Cedar. I named her Cedar, which I tried to name all the other animals. So she's actually Cedar the 4th, or the 5th. Well, the 4th, because the old dog was named Duke, and I didn't want to change his name because it really fit him, and it was a great name. So I was going to let him stay as Duke. But anyway, this is Cedar the 4th, and she's for keeps. This is the picture they took of her right off the paddy wagon after they captured her. And she was under a house for several days with puppies hiding, and it took them several days to get her captured. And she was still in the pound when I got her, and she was all, scrawny and malnourished and kind of what I would call feral, but I've been told she wasn't feral, but she was totally unsocialized. Let's just say that. She didn't trust any human, and she was just really, really sad dog. And so anyway, the Lord brought us together. Long story short, when I went to the shelter, she did start to bond with me right away. The Lord showed me to just grab her face and press her head against my leg. And I did that, and I held her against my leg, and that kind of made her bond to me a little bit. Now, we weren't best friends at that point, but for some reason that made her trust me more than the other people that were at the shelter. And so I took her home the next day. She lost her puppies they took her puppies to a rescue. The day that I met her, I never saw her puppies. And the next day they got her fixed and they gave her to me. So that's her first picture. And this picture was taken the day that I took her home. And that was our first walk that we ever took together. And she had to be, the man at the shelter had to put her in my truck. And then a neighbor man had to get her out of my truck because she wasn't willing to go in and wasn't willing to go out. And I couldn't really pick her up on my own safely. So I had to get help. And once she went inside my apartment, she didn't want to leave because I guess that was her first experience with comfortable shelter where there was a carpet, the temperature was good, and all of that stuff. So she really didn't want to go out again. But anyway, but I made her go out so that we could go for a walk. And the miracle about Cedar is that she was ready to, how should I put it? God house trained her. So from day one, I never had to house train her or crate train her. The Lord did that. And that was one of the things that I knew was going to be a big hurdle for us. But I didn't even have to do it. The Lord had her house trained. So that was a huge miracle. And about this time, the Lord also set me up with grief counseling. And I'm still doing grief counseling, but we're kind of transitioning into other stuff. And long story short, all of my counseling sessions have been totally free, paid by Jesus. And I won't go into the details, but I have free counseling because it's a miracle, and the Lord knew that I needed it. And that's one thing also that shows me that it was from the Lord, is that He paid for it too. And my counselor is really gifted. He's a young man who's young enough to be my son. So I feel totally comfortable talking to him, because I feel like I'm talking to a son figure in my life. And he's so delightful, and we laugh together, and I cry a lot, but he's just really gifted. And he's a Christian, and it's Christian counseling, and he is so gifted. I can tell that the Lord really appointed him to be a counselor. He has said many things to me that I knew was the Holy Spirit talking through him. And it's been a massive blessing to me. It's really helped. So this is also Cedar on our first walk. And she's looking out at the world. Now, this is something funny about Cedar. She was really awkward in the truck when I first got her. And this is how she would sit in the truck, facing backwards. And this is what she always did to hide from the world, because, somebody might come and snatch her or whatever. She was always afraid of, kidnappers, it seemed like. And she wouldn't let anybody touch her but me. So, but as time went by, she got more comfortable, and those are her little babies that I had for her since she lost her puppies. I gave her those play toys, and I would have them drink her milk every day, play. And she would always be really still until they stopped drinking. And we did that every day for a long time, but she doesn't really play with those anymore. This is when she was starting to get really shiny and pretty, after she had been eating good food for a while. She was still really skinny, but her fur was starting to shine a lot. And she was getting more perky. So this is when she started looking me in the eye a lot. When I first got her, she didn't really look me in the eye. And she didn't come when I called, and she didn't wag her tail. She has a little tiny tail, and it's deformed, but it does wag. But it didn't wag for the first several weeks. Now she wags her tail all the time. And then she finally realized that it makes more sense to sit in the truck facing forward. So that was progress. And now she sits in the truck as if she's at the helm of the wheel, and kind of like she's, piloting a ship or something, with her nose almost touching the window. And I think that we look pretty funny in the truck together, but I do need to teach her better skills. But anyway, better manners when she's in the truck. But other than that, she's doing good, and she's having a good time. So now she owns the truck. She isn't afraid of it anymore. And this is her waiting, because on the last counseling session I went to, I brought her with me, and this is her waiting to see the counselor. And she's all tense because it's one of the few buildings that she had ever been in before, because she was in the shelter, and she's been in my apartment. She's been at the groomer's, who is the only other person who's ever really petted her. And but here she's waiting for the counselor, and she's pretty scared, but she had a good time once we went in there. And from now on, she'll be going with me because it's family counseling now. And then the Lord gave her, when I got Max, we lived in the mountains, and he hiked the mountains with me all the time. Twice a week, we went hiking. But I'm too old to hike, and I don't live in the mountains anymore. So me and Cedar, the only thing we've ever done is just take regular walks. But the Lord recently gave her and I a new adventure that we could do, and we can go on the paddle boat. I can't swim, and I don't know how to how to operate a real boat, but anybody can paddle boat as long as your legs can move. So this is us on the paddle boat, and she totally loves this. I always wanted to take Max on the water, and I was never able to. So this is a blessing to me that I can take Cedar on the water. And she really loves it. So the other funny thing about Cedar, Max always knew that TV isn't real. He always knew that. But Cedar doesn't know that. She's a TV dog. So this is her listening to an opera singer and taking it very seriously. Cedar, anytime she hears noises on the computer, especially if it's a dog barking or something like that, she really pays attention. She also pays close attention if she hears a baby crying. That means something to her. Babies that cry interest her a lot. I had to cover up my mouse pad because it reveals where I work, so there's nothing sinister there, if you notice that, but I just didn't want to expose where I work. But anyway, if it weren't for Max, there would have never been Cedar, and I still wish I had Max, but God took him away because he had suffered enough, and I would have never allowed Max to die. If it were up to me, I would have had Max stay alive as long as I'm alive, but that would have made him suffer more. He was old and he was suffering, and I didn't accept that. I knew he was suffering, but I still wanted him to keep living. But the Lord took him to heaven and then gave me another dog that was also suffering because Cedar was very malnourished and underweight, and she was suffering a lot before I got her. So the Lord helped two dogs. He took one to heaven, and then he gave the other dog a home. And so I have to glorify the Lord for that, because I would have never chosen that. I would have chosen for Max to stay with me, even though he was suffering. So God is a lot better than I am, and he's much more loving than I am. And now Max has his reward. These pictures of Max were taken within the first week that I got him. And this is him at the river. But you can really see how beautiful Max was. This picture was taken about 5 months later, because I got Max in the summertime, and then this was the very first winter that we had together. And you can see how gorgeous and slick his hair got. And, whoops, this picture's in the wrong place. Hold on. This is a picture of Max's beautiful physique that he had when he was young, and his beautiful brown eyes. And you can see, that's him in his youth. That was his glory days. And that was our first winter together. And he was the most beautiful dog and the most perfect dog. I don't think any dog could ever be more perfect than Max was. And then this is what he was like when he got old, but he wasn't too old to enjoy life. This is when he was old, but he was still having a lot of fun. And then this picture was taken just a couple of months before he died. Actually, this picture, about 2 months before Max died was when this was taken. And you can see, he was so beautiful. But you can see in the picture how much he was suffering. And that's why he's in heaven now. Anyway, I just have to thank the Lord. And I am really grateful for Cedar. She's a beautiful, beautiful friend. And she really gives me a lot of joy. And we're going to have a lot of good years together. I hope not too many. I hope Jesus comes back really, really soon. But if Jesus doesn't come back soon, she'll have a long life ahead of her. And anyway, I'm really grateful. And I hope that blesses you. Even though I'm crying, that doesn't mean that I'm not happy. I'm very, very happy because of Jesus and because all the joy. Anyway, I hope that blesses you, and I really am happy. It's hard not to cry when I'm thinking about Max, but I'm really, really thankful. And look at her beautiful golden eyes. Max had beautiful brown eyes, and Cedar has beautiful golden eyes. Very unique. And anyway, she's something. Oh, now she still hasn't let anybody pet her except me and the groomer, but she now runs up to all of our neighbors and she wags her tail and romps and gets really playful, and she barks to say hello. She's a vocal dog. Max was always silent. He never barked unless he really thought that there was danger, but she actually barks to say hello to people. So she's starting to love all of our neighbors, and she's starting to really love people in general. So I think in a really short time, she's going to start letting people pet her. And that's going to be really fun. But anyway, we're going to have many days on that paddle boat because it's cheap and it's something that I can do. And she totally loves it. So me and Cedar we have our own little private yacht in our own minds, and I consider it our yacht, and so does she. So anyway, we're very happy, and thank you for all of your prayers and everything. And anyway, Jesus he's beautiful, and hope that blessed you.